The Timberwolves are reportedly signing Kyle Anderson, the return of Slo-Mo, what that means, what could his role be on defense, and what he brings to the Wolves offense. Probably more offense than you might think. Next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Welcome into a very special bonus episode of Locked On Wolves on this Friday. Happy Friday, happy weekend. We're going to talk Slo-Mo today. Being bought out by the Memphis Grizzlies, is about to make his return to the Timberwolves via reports, or not via reports, according to reports, first from Shams Charania of ESPN and then also from John Krasinski of The Athletic, confirming this. And we're going to dig into Slo-Mo's fit in his I guess tour part two or second tour with the Timberwolves. A lot to get into here. I really think what he could provide defensively and giving Chris Finch some more optionality in terms of his rotations is the biggest thing. But I also think there's a little bit more of an offensive impact here potentially than what it might seem like on its face. So I want to dig in on that. First, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen, perhaps your second listen here today as well, since we're doing 2 episodes today. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. If you're new to the show, this is a quick hitter, 15 or so minutes plus or minus, just on Slo-Mo and the acquisition by Minnesota. That if you're, again, new, I do daily Monday through Friday shows, typically around 30 minutes, and then occasionally a quick 10, 15, 20-minute bonus episode when news breaks or it fits, and it fits today. We had to do the post-game pod following Wolves Clippers last night, and today we're going to talk all things Kyle Anderson. Of course, Slo-Mo was with the Wolves a couple of years ago. Yes, a couple of years ago, also 3 years ago. Remember, he was on the Wolves for 2 consecutive years. He had interest in coming back in free agency in the summer of 2024, but ultimately it didn't work with the Wolves cap situation. Instead, they signed and traded him to Golden State, which was kind of a runner-up destination that he was interested in. And by doing that, he was able to make more money. And by all accounts, there's a lot of reporting out there. I think Chris Hine and also John Krasinski talked about how the way that Tim Conley and the Timberwolves front office treated Slo-Mo on the way out helped kind of grease the wheels for his return via the buyout market here in late February of 2026. And that matters, right? The way you treat players matters, and Kyle Anderson can still play. Real quickly, the logistics of this. It was reported actually during the game, Wolves Clippers last night, that he was placed on waivers following his buyout agreement with Memphis. He will clear waivers because any team that claimed him would have to deal with the big salary. Once he clears waivers, anybody can sign him to the veteran minimum. Apparently, Denver was interested, but because of the aforementioned positive experience Kyle Anderson had on his way out nearly 2 years ago, he reportedly is picking Minnesota over the Denver Nuggets. A few different folks had reported that the Nuggets were the other team that had interest in bringing in Kyle Anderson. Now, in terms of his fit, let's talk about the defensive end first. Slo-Mo, in a Timberwolves uniform, primarily played the 4. Prior to coming to Minnesota, when he was with Memphis, he played a fair amount of small ball 5 with the Memphis Grizzlies. He was essentially the backup center for like a little over a season for them. And he barely did that in a Timberwolves uniform because turns out when he was with the Wolves, they also had Karl-Anthony Towns. Remember, the last Cat year was also the last Kyle Anderson year in Minnesota. So he wasn't needed to play center. He basically didn't really at all over his 2 years in Minnesota last time around. But he did a little bit of it last year in both Golden State and Miami. Obviously limited minutes this year between Utah and Memphis. Believe it or not, he's been in 4 places since he was last in Minnesota. But he's very capable of doing it. And what have the Wolves struggled with most this year on the defensive end? Well, it's the non-Rudy Gobert minutes. We know how bad the Timberwolves defense has been with Gobert off the floor. And if you're not familiar, I'll tell you. With Rudy Gobert off the floor, this is through play. This does not include the Clippers game, although the Wolves defense was pretty good in the Clippers game. But to this point in the season, the Wolves have an 11th percentile defense with Gobert off the floor, 121.6 points per 100 opponent possessions, which is miserable. The offense is very good with Gobert off the floor. It nets out to a plus 1.6 overall. But that's a problem. Go back 2 seasons. The non-Rudy Gobert defense for Minnesota was 86th percentile. Let me say that again. It's 11th percentile this year, over 121 points per 100 possessions. It was 10 points per possession better, and it was 86th percentile 2 years ago. 11th percentile this year, 86 2 years ago, and just over 111 points allowed per 100 opponent possessions. This is with Kyle Anderson in the fold. Now, that's just a clean Gobert on versus Gobert off. If we want to add in the Slo-Mo piece as well, the numbers, the gap's even bigger. With Slo-Mo on the floor, the Timberwolves defense, Slo-Mo on and Gobert off, the Timberwolves defense was still very, very good 2 years ago. Now, remember, this was also the Wolves defense that was the best in the league, full stop, like by far. Not as good as last year's historic OKC defense, but to that point, it was the second best defense in the last 20 years. If you want to look at the gap between the league's first and second best defenses in any given season, it was a dominant Wolves defense 2 years ago. Now, in case you, like, the first thing that pops in your mind is something that also popped into my mind, which is, well, they had Nickeil Alexander-Walker that year too. There were some other differences. They had Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I don't think anyone's going to say Karl-Anthony Towns was the reason this team was the league's best defense 2 years ago, but I mean, fair counterpoint. He was great against Durant in the first round of the playoffs, great against Jokic in round 2 of the playoffs that year. But let's take the Nickeil Alexander-Walker point. Last season, when Alexander Walker was on the team, and I'm doing this because Alexander Walker is a clear plus defender, and nobody would argue that in a vacuum, Cat is necessarily a plus defender, even though he has qualities and has had stretches where he has been a plus defender. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, last year with him in the fold, Gobert off the court, the Wolves had a 39th percentile defense. Not as bad as this year's 11th percentile defense, but they were still giving up over 116 points per 100 opponent possessions last year with Gobert off the floor. 2 years ago, with Gobert off the floor, this was a good defense. This was an 86th percentile defense, and the biggest difference is Kyle Anderson was on that team. And Kyle Anderson was in all of those lineups that were successful defensively. Now, most of those lineups, he was playing with both Naz Reid and Karl-Anthony Towns, so he was playing the 3 and not the 5. Okay, that's important to note. I'm not suggesting the Wolves can play heavy minutes with Kyle Anderson at the 5. I want to talk about how I think the Wolves can do this and in a condensed role for Kyle Anderson, and also his impact on the offense, which I think will be more significant than you might imagine. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode, the bonus episode of Locked On Wolves, is brought to us by DoorDash. The season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights when your team stresses you out. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Those late-night interviews hit, and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you show up prepared. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by 5-Hour Energy. It is time for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. With 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy, there's something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. My number one pick is tried and true berry. Big, bold berry flavor, slightly sweet, and of course, also very fruity flavor. There's also the classic mixed berry flavor has raspberry and also blackberry in it. I love blackberry as a flavor. It's got a smooth sweetness without being overly sugary and a light tartness that keeps it balanced. My number 2 draft pick, if somebody were to sneak in front of me and grab berry, I would pick strawberry watermelon, sweet and tart, tastes like candy. I love anything watermelon flavored candy. Strawberry and watermelon are the ultimate flavor duo. Some flavors are made to go together, and strawberry and watermelon are 2 of those flavors. If I could pick a sleeper, it would be peach mango. Ripe peach flavor on the first sip. The mango adds tropical depth and sweetness as well. A fantastic pick if some of your other favorites are off the board. Again, number 1 pick, berry. Number 2, strawberry watermelon. The sleeper is peach mango. 5-Hour Energy Shots give you a boost with 0 sugar. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy Shots Available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Today's episode is also brought to us by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, and that's with the fans. All you got to do is pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game. You'll find your tickets. You'll get them locked in within minutes. The Wolves are back in town following Sunday's matinee at Denver. Get back to Target Center when the Wolves do next week. You can see your prices all in up front. No hidden fees or surprise fees at checkout, which is probably the best thing about Game Time. Also great, though, the view from your seat you can see it'll help make your buying decision much easier, and also the zone deals. Choose your section. Game Time will pick your seats, and you will save. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, a couple more Kyle Anderson points here. Something I mentioned here just a moment ago at the end of the first segment. The Wolves, when the defense was successful, Slo-Mo on the floor a couple years ago, Rudy off, Slo-Mo was playing the 3, not the 5. So I'm not suggesting that the Timberwolves defense will be just as good with Kyle Anderson at the 5 instead of Rudy Gobert. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's going to be a better, every Kyle Anderson lineup ever basically has had connectivity. He's a great team defender, a lot like Mike Conley in that regard. He's also not as long in the tooth as Mike Conley. He's a bigger body. He's always been a switchable defender. He really can guard 1 through 5 and be dangerous enough to do it. He's not a, you don't want him on a speedy, primary option in the perimeter, but he's a capable defender who is kind of that connective tissue for the team on both ends of the floor. There's all sorts of examples of that. There's a story floating around about the conference finals game against Dallas a couple years ago, and him, basically getting Ant to make a skip pass, right? That he needed to make in that moment. And Kyle Anderson had been like on him for it, and it finally happened. It's like that on defense with Slo-Mo as well, where he could be that connective tissue. He's switchable. He's versatile. Chris Fitch has called him a Swiss Army knife on both ends of the floor. He is that. And so they can play small with him at the 5. If they wanted to play big with him at the 3, they could do that. I think that scares me with the Wolves offense. I really don't think you can play him with Rudy Gobert, and I don't think he fits at all with Julius Randle. So I think it's probably pretty likely he's a fringe rotation guy right now, which puts him in the same boat as TJ Shannon, Jalen Clark, Mike Conley, Juan Berger. You could say these guys are all kind of, they might not play. They might play 5 minutes. They might play 10 minutes. That's kind of where I think Kyle Anderson fits. The nice thing is it gives Chris Finch a lot of options when it comes to different matchups. And I do think he fits as a small ball 5. You give up a little bit defensively, but I mean, like, what's the alternative? They're already an 11th percentile defense. Like, they're not going to be worse with Kyle Anderson on the floor instead of playing Randle and Nas together and just banging your head against the wall over and over, that maybe this time they'll defend. It's not going to work that way. So I think it's a Nas, Kyle Anderson front court, Jaden at the 3. I mean, he's your rim protection, right? Kyle Anderson's your connective tissue in the middle. Put him in drop. He can do okay. He's not Rudy Gobert, obviously, but he can hold his own. And the Jaden McDaniels is your weak side rim protection. And that's how you roll. Like, that's going to be a better defense. I promise you, those minutes will be better than a Nas, Reid, Julius Randle front court when Rudy Gobert is on the bench. I promise you. Now, on the offensive end of the floor, Kyle Anderson, same deal. He's not going to score points. Like, even in his prime, Kyle Anderson only scored double figures in a season one time, and that was his second to last year in Memphis 5 years ago. 2020, 2021, he scored 12 a game. In a Timberwolves uniform, across 148 regular season games, he was 7.8 points per game. He was 35% from 3. He had his career best three-point shooting year in Minnesota his first year, when he shot 1.5 per game at 41%. Dude's not shooting threes. He's not here to score. That's not the point. What is he here to do? It's pass the basketball. He can play a Julius Randle-esque role on the offensive side of the floor. And before you laugh, I mean, Julius Randle's 31% from 3. Just saying, like Kyle Anderson is not about to shoot above the break threes at the at all, much less at the volume of Julius Randle. But there's that. There's the assist rate. Right now, Julius Randle is the only Timberwolves player with an assist rate over 20%. I talked about this extensively on Thursday's show. Last year, there were 4 guys with assist rates over 20%. 2 years ago, you know who one of the guys was with an assist rate over 20%? That's right. It was Kyle Anderson. 25%, a career high 25% assist rate in his last year in Minnesota. For his career, he's nearly 18%. And since he came to Minnesota, so the last 2 seasons plus his 2 in Minnesota, he has an assist rate of 22.6%. That rate went up and up and up as his career has worn on. And it's because he's become a better pick and roll passer. He's not Joe Ingles, but think that sort of a Joe Ingles-esque creator in the half court. He's also gotten really good at drawing out pick and rolls, scoring a little bit, at the 10, 12, 15-foot range with a little push shot that he likes to shoot just inside the free throw line. That's the thing he's capable of doing. And then the other thing, which this is a much more, less needed niche sort of thing that we saw, like Joe Ingles play this role a couple times last year, which is if an opposing team goes to zone, you put Kyle Anderson at the nail, he facilitates from the middle of the floor. That's something he can do. It's another guy who's capable of doing that. But I go back to the Swiss Army knife thing. Like if Julius Randle's supposed to be this hub, well, guess what? He's not scoring efficiently right now. He doesn't always play hard, and he's not a very good defender most of the time. Now, can the Wolves win a title with Julius Randle having those 3 issues that I just listed? No, they can't. He's got to play like he did for much of the first half of the season if the Wolves are going to have a shot at getting to the conference finals or past, much less winning a championship. There's no question about that. But on the nights where he doesn't have it, or against certain opponents, or if he's in foul trouble, like he was, a couple games ago when Nas and Rudy were out and Randle was in foul trouble, or I guess that was Tuesday in Portland too. I think Randle was in foul trouble briefly. You need to have somebody else to go to. And that's Kyle Anderson. He can provide a reasonable facsimile of what Julius Randle does offensively and use him as a hub, use him as a pick and roll creator, a facilitator, a distributor. And defensively, he can give you some semblance of a defense when Rudy Gobert is off the floor. Small ball 5 defensively. Offensively, it's a point forward role. I'm talking 10 minutes a game. But every minute matters. And for as much as we collectively as fans and media like to harp on Chris Finch and rotations and those decisions, this gives Chris Finch another option. In addition to all the other options he's got. Io DeSumo as an addition, TJ Shannon now healthy, Kyle Anderson now, Mike Conley's reacquisition. There's more guys available to Chris Finch to mix and match and pull levers and push buttons and do things based on matchups, based on how guys are playing. And now he's got to make the right decisions. But Kyle Anderson being in the fold does matter on both ends of the floor. We'll talk more about this undoubtedly next week. He's not going to clear waivers in time to play Sunday. So, we'll have, I guess, Monday's show will be the post-game pod from Monday's Wolves-Nuggets game. So it'll be probably middle of next week before we see Slo-Mo in a Timberwolves uniform. But I would expect him to play a little bit. I don't think he's going to be a major rotation piece. He's just not. Like, he hasn't started more than 10 minutes in a season since his first year in Minnesota, or 10 games in a season since his first year in Minnesota. Although he has, you look at the minutes per game average, he's still been playing like 20 minutes a game this year. So it's not like he can't play heavy minutes. He's only 32, but I don't think that's in the cards. I think it's going to be a fringe rotation role depending on matchups, but there's a good 10, 12 minutes a game there from Kyle Anderson where you can shore up your defense with Gobert off the floor. You don't want to play him with Rudy. You don't really want to play him with Randle, but you play him with Nas in the front court. On offense, he does his facsimile of Randle with Randle off the floor, and you're in business. I like it. I love the acquisition. Good job by Tim Conley. Very curious to see how Chris Finch uses him. All right. Sunday, Wolves Nuggets, the post game or the live postcast with Jack and Luke will be on YouTube following that game. So around 5:30 p.m. Central Time. I'll be back bright and early Monday, maybe late Sunday night with the post game pod Wolves Nuggets. We'll set you up for the rest of the week. We'll talk more Slo-Mo next week. We're with you here all weekend as we continue to cover the Wolves here in the post All-Star break piece of the schedule as Minnesota looks to keep ascending in the Western Conference standings. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder, if you haven't already signed up, you can check out the Everydayer Club at lockedonwolves.supercast.com. You'll get every episode of Locked On Wolves ad-free. Plus, you'll get access to the members-only Discord chat. You'll be able to jump into the channel in there and talk Wolves with myself and many other Wolves fans. Head to LockedOnWolves.supercast.com to join now. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Reminder, Locked On Wolves is part of the very same Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.